Hey, welcome to Real Talk, where I give real answers to real questions from real worship leaders. If you are a real worship leader with a real question and you want a real answer, head right here and submit your question for a future episode. Got some good questions this week? Let's talk about it. My question is, how do I tell our teenage worship drummer that he needs to dress more appropriately? So he usually comes in pants and a blank t-shirt to Sunday service. He does not comb his hair. Our dress code is not too dressy. We don't wear a tux, but men wear long sleeve dress shirts and slacks with a tie, and women are in dresses, skirts, and blouses. Not to mention that both of his parents are also on the team. The drummer that we've had before would be the same age, 15, and they have always dressed appropriately and with respect. I'm starting to think that because he thinks he's the only drummer, we can't ask him to step down. There was one Sunday recently where he wore a long sleeve shirt. And right when we finished worship, he took it off immediately in front of people sitting in the congregation. How should I approach him with love and grace? And what should I do if he doesn't obey? Thank you, and God bless. I'm going to assume that this is a different culture than the culture that I live in, just from some of the language. So I'm trying to come at it from that perspective. But, I mean, I know that everybody who just heard me read that is thinking, this just sounds like legalism. And maybe like you never thought about that before, but like, hey, everybody in our church, you need to wear a dress shirt and slacks with a tie. And women, you better be in dresses and skirts and blouses. All right, there's a difference, I think, between thinking like those are appropriate clothes to wear when we worship. There's a difference between believing that and like mandating it for people. And I understand it's a difficult balance to strike, and maybe you have more, maybe it's more appropriate to talk about those things with not just people who come to your church on a Sunday morning, but people who are going to be leading on stage in front of people. But to me, this doesn't sound like that big of a deal. He comes in pants and a blank t-shirt to Sunday service. Maybe he's coming in like pants and a white tee. I mean, he's a drummer. What do you expect? No, he doesn't comb his hair. I mean, you say his parents are on the team. I think like let his parents deal with him. I don't know if if his parents are on the team. I don't come to him as a concerned third party, not as like, hey, I'm the leader of this team and you're going to dress up when you're here. I don't think that's ever the appropriate way to talk to someone on the team. Hey, I'm the leader here and you need to be dressed up. And I say that because you asked, what should I do if he doesn't obey? And that, when I hear that language, and this happens all the time on Real Talk, like that makes me think that somebody's first language isn't English. So I'm trying to give some grace here with like the language barrier, but like it's not about like making somebody obey, right? You talk to them like a person. And if this isn't appropriate dress in your church because of whatever factors that is, then open up that conversation with the kid and be like, hey, whenever we come to church, everybody wears whatever people seem to wear at your church. And unless you have like a specific reason, I don't know. Like I think there is like a threshold of what we should wear on Sunday, right? Like we don't want to be a slob. We don't want to wear like, hey, I'm going to wear sweatpants and a dirty t-shirt or something. We can do better than that because what we're doing is important when we are helping lead our church, but I also don't want to take it over the top. And it feels to me like in this situation, like you've kind of taken it over the top. Just being honest. Like, if it's a problem, let his parents deal with it. Do you have worship team guidelines is another question. I talk about it all the time. This is something that you could put in your worship team guidelines. This could be an expectation you have for your team members. I don't know if I would personally have it for my team members that you need to wear a shirt and tie, but that could help in this situation. You also said the phrase, I'm starting to think, because he thinks he's the only drummer, we can't ask him to step down. I would just cool it on comments like that, because do you really think he's thinking that? Or do you think he's just being a 15-year-old kid? Probably just being a 15-year-old kid, right? I don't think he's like, I'm the only drummer. I'm going to wear a blank t-shirt on Sunday. I really don't think that he's doing that. He's probably just a 15-year-old kid, teenager, going through a phase. So if I'm being honest, it seems blown out of proportion. Just let the kid play. He comes in pants, a blank t-shirt. He's not wearing like a Metallica shirt or something, or an Insane Clown Posse t-shirt. His hair isn't combed. I don't know. I'd just let it go, to be honest. That's what I would do. There's someone on my worship team who's protective, or say obsessed with the role of leading worship. Our pastor divided the responsibility between us 4 worship leaders, and I find her being supportive towards everyone else but me. She has never divided her responsibility and has been leading for weeks until our pastor imposed this rule. I want help about how to deal with her. I try being as kind as possible, but sometimes she's very passive-aggressive, and I find it difficult. I've said it once, and I'll say it 100 times. Multiple worship team leaders never works. That concept of having multiple people who have like, oh, we're like just nobody's really in charge, but we're all going to act like we're in charge and we're not really going to be on the same page. It just never works. Like, here is another example of it. You need somebody who is clearly in charge of the worship team. I don't know. Like, somebody has to be in charge. It can't just be like, here's a shared responsibility. Like, there have to be defined responsibilities in the worship ministry. And I'm saying this for everybody watching the video, not for you specifically, because I don't know what you can do about that necessarily. But I'm just telling you, this is a problem that is going to happen unless people have clearly defined responsibilities. I've seen it over and over again, because I guarantee nobody knows who's really in charge of your worship team, and therefore nobody can make any meaningful decision on the team. It happens over and over and over again. I see it a million times. Please stop having multiple worship team leaders who don't have defined responsibilities on the team. It does not work. Somebody needs to be in charge. Now, what do you do in this situation? The responsibilities are divided between 4 worship leaders. I don't know what that looks like, but first of all, I would go to, what is the biblical process? You go to them one-on-one, and I know this is difficult, but I go to them one-on-one and say, here's my problem. I feel this way about what's going on, and that's where it has to start. So if you've never gone to this girl and told her face-to-face, and you've just only ever told people about what's happening and not actually gone to her, then that's the first step, to go to her. And I'm not saying that that's going to be easy, and I'm not saying you go up to her and like, I can't believe you're doing this, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying go up to her and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this right now. And maybe they don't even realize that it's a problem. Maybe she doesn't even realize it's a problem. So that's the first step. The second step is probably talking to your pastor and saying, I don't think that this is working, because we need a defined worship team leader. Like, this isn't working. I don't know how many times I could say that, but how many times can I say don't have multiple worship team leaders? And then I guess I'll just say, sometimes we deal with difficult people in ministry. A lot of times we deal with difficult people in ministry. This is something that you are going to have to figure out what you're going to do in this situation, because this is probably not the only time you will deal with a situation like this if you're serving in the church. And I know you asked me what to do, and I said you're going to have to figure out what to do, but I mean, consider this a growing opportunity for you. And it's not a reason to quit the team. Also, people who lead like this don't lead forever, though eventually something will happen where she probably won't be leading anymore unless she changes her ways. I've just found that to be true in my time of leading worship. It's not going to be like this forever. Let's talk about, number 1, go to her and say something about it. Number 2, define your roles on the worship team. And number 3, sometimes people are mean and we can't control them. We can only control ourselves, especially if we are the leader on the team. Now, one of the things that may help is having your worship rehearsal time be more relational, because whenever we're just running through songs and we think we're in a band or something, and we're only running through songs and that's all we focus on, and we never build relationships with people, sometimes that causes problems like this because we don't have a good relationship with people. So if you want time to build a good relationship with people, one of the best times to do that is during your worship rehearsal. And that's why I put together the worship rehearsal blueprint. So download that down below. I'll link it down there for free. It is my 5-part blueprint for a perfect worship rehearsal that leads your team well musically so that they're prepared for Sunday, but also spiritually so that they grow closer to God, and relationally so that they grow closer to each other. So if you want to make your worship rehearsals not just about music and run into problems like I just talked about, then make sure you have a relational component to your worship team gathering so that you grow as a team. Check that out down in the description below. Other than that, until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.